What's up, everybody? It's June 20th, 2020. I'm your host, Justin, and as always, I'm joined by Perry.
What's up, Justin? I was curious, man. Are you my phone charger?
No?
Okay, because without you, I would die. And it's pretty much the same thing.
Nice. I like it.
Well, I mean, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, you would die.
I mean, you've been to my house multiple times and you forget your phone charger literally every time.
Yeah, I think I've forgotten at least a dozen at your house.
Yeah, I've got it. You forget everything. I've got a jacket hanging up in the closet, and it's been here for like 4 months.
Yeah, I love that jacket. I was actually wondering where it went like earlier today. I'm like, I haven't seen my jacket in a long time.
It's here. How's it going, everyone?
So today, we're not only talking about where I left my clothes, but we are also going to be talking about the NFC North.
Yeah, we're gonna chat about the NFC North. Some fantasy relevant players there, some not so relevant players, but apparently we still have to talk about them. Yeah, how are things going for you, Justin?
Good. So it's officially summer here, and I know that because I didn't look at my backyard for 3 weeks, and now I have 6 foot tall grass that I have spent the last 3 days fighting. I'm confident
Fighting?
I can win. Yeah.
Fighting, like Conor McGregor.
Yeah, like just using fists to take this stuff down.
Yeah, Conor McGregor. I mean, he's tried boxing, he's tried MMA. I heard the next fight is Conor McGregor versus the lawn.
Yeah, my backyard.
So,
My backyard would take him.
It's pay-per-view. Yeah, but it'll only go one round.
All his fights do.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Today was my first day back at work in the tasting room. If you guys don't know, I work at a distillery. And man, I'm exhausted. I am not in work shape. I was on my feet all day and I am so tired.
We're going to run you a little mini training camp to get you ready.
I know. And I don't know if you guys can tell, my voice is like a little tired because I was doing so much talking today during tastings. It was really, really fun. Like I was very happy to be back at work doing that, but I'm worn out.
Yeah, those people are lucky. They got to listen to you talk for free.
For free. Well, you know what's fun is everybody that's listening to us right now are also talking for free.
Listening to you talk for free.
They might be talking.
That's true. Join the conversation in the comments below.
Oh my God, that was such a smooth transition. Holy cow.
And while you're there, make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. And like I said, join the conversation below because you could win an autographed Andre Reed jersey.
You know, if we could speak, I'd say we're doing very well at this podcasting thing. I think you and I like stutter too much and mess up our words, but that was like a really smooth transition. Like we don't have a script, guys. That was like,
yeah, just impromptu.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's my life. Things are going well. Speaking of which, you should do this. I mean, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
My goal is to one day get to a point where when we do it, it's not a surprise and we don't have to point it out.
We are a long way from there.
Yeah, goals.
Relationship goals.
Podcast goals.
All right. Well, we're not going to cover the news today. I think Justin has one piece of news that he wanted to cover, but we just went over it 2 days ago. I don't want to just like bombard you guys with a bunch of like rookie signing deals and stuff like that just really don't matter at the moment. So, Justin, you were talking about something though before we started.
Yeah, we got one piece of news no one cares about, and that's that tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles in classic Philadelphia sports news gets.
Wait, which one? Because there are two.
Dallas Goedert. Yeah, good point. I did not use his name. He got sucker punched at a restaurant and had to be rushed to a hospital. He says he's doing fine a couple hours later. So,
was this in a bar or?
It just said a restaurant. It didn't specify. It just happened, so there's not a lot of details yet. I hope to get all of the details, especially the irrelevant ones like the name of the bar, things like this.
Dude, I'm pretty sure it's like an 80% chance that the person that sucker punched him was a Zach Ertz owner last year. And
Right?
he's like, dude, those were my touchdowns.
Zach Ertz dynasty owner.
Oh, man. All right. Well, like Justin said before, we've got the NFC North to cover today. So that is the Bears, the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers. And we're just going to do the same thing we did last time. We'll start with the quarterbacks. I'll start first this time. We'll start with some hotness, and that is the Bears quarterback situation.
Yes.
I actually like legitimately just asked Justin, who's the quarterback? Like who's starting for Chicago? And we both came to the conclusion that it's probably Mitch Trubisky that's going to be the starting quarterback to begin the season. I don't think he's the better quarterback personally. Justin, do you concur?
I think it depends on the week, but on average, no, he's not.
Yeah. I think Nick Foles is probably a better quarterback. Remember, Nick Foles is one season removed from like getting a huge deal with the Jaguars, and had he not gotten hurt, he probably would have started all season with the Jags, and he probably would have been just fine. I think.
And the year prior to that was Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah. So I'm not drafting either of these quarterbacks, period.
Just to be clear.
Yeah. 2 quarterback leagues. Oh, man. Like, I would literally, like, Nick Foles maybe as my, like, hey, I'll just bench this guy and hope he gets started and does that thing where he just shows up and throws 14 touchdowns in 3 games. But, oof, it's really nasty. This is like a nasty quarterback situation. I think it's the worst quarterback situation in the NFL, hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like they didn't go out and get someone who was like clearly better than Trubisky. They went out and got someone who is arguably better.
Yeah. The only news that's really come out of this race is that the Bears picked up the 5th-year option on Mitchell Trubisky 6 weeks ago. So this is old news, but and the quote coming out from the GM Ryan Pace was, "We believe in Mitch. That doesn't change." So that tells us nothing. But
I mean, it does tell us more than who was the player a couple weeks ago where they said they believed in him but did not pick up his 5th-year option.
Oh, that's right.
I forgot who it was.
Right. So I guess there's that. I believe that Mitch will start. Remember, I mean, Mitch Trubisky had a very, very, very bad 2019. He was horrible, but he had a pretty good 2018, right? Like, he could end up being good, but do not draft him. Do not draft a quarterback on this team, period. I really don't have a whole lot else to say about it.
Yeah, I think we've said enough about them, probably before we even started.
True. Big true. Big true.
I'm going to start with Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. So his current ADP is outside the top 12 quarterbacks, which is just insane to think about. But
is it justified?
So that's part of the thing. Like we were talking about before, it's a deep year for a lot of skill positions, especially quarterback. I don't think it's justified. I think he should be inside the top 12. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 or anything like that. But inside the top 12, I believe so.
I agree.
Yeah, so in 2019, he is missing his best weapon, his number 1 wide receiver for, I believe it was 4 weeks. May have been longer than that. I forgot I have it down below here. Yeah, 4 weeks. And then stepping into a new offensive system in 2019, he had a down year, but he was still able to throw over 4,000 yards and 26 touchdowns with 4 interceptions. That's not bad stats.
Year.
Yeah.
Down year. Down year.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, people are looking down because they're remembering Aaron Rodgers, who is the number 1 quarterback in the NFL basically every year, or number 1, number 2 quarterback. So that they're like, oh, he's lost it. No, he has not lost it. He's still a great quarterback. He's not Patrick Mahomes at this point in his career. I'm still okay with having him, but that's exactly why I'm drafting a quarterback late, because I could get him at the end of a draft practically free instead of a Mahomes with my second or third pick. So yeah, I'm taking that all day. I expect, as long as their receiver core got slightly better, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, but they got a little bit better at receiving, and I expect Adams to play a full year. So
I personally think that Aaron Rodgers is like my gem of the draft. He's a guy that I am targeting in a lot of leagues because he's going as late as he is, and he has top 3 potential, right? I think that nobody can really argue that. And if Aaron Rodgers were to show up this season and put up like 35 touchdowns, would anybody be like, what? Where did that come from? I don't think that'll be the case. I think that he'll probably sit around where he was last year, maybe a little more yards, right? He only threw for 4,000 yards last season, but I think he'll probably throw closer to like 4,400 yards and probably around the same touchdown count, maybe a few more touchdowns. I'm sure Justin will talk about the receivers, and that's part of the reason why I believe that. But Justin, I was going to ask you, how many interceptions did Jameis Winston throw last season?
30. 30.
Aaron Rodgers has thrown 38 interceptions in his entire career.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I want to ask you real quick.
Speechless. I left him speechless, guys.
Who would you rather have? Because these are other quarterbacks going in the same range as him: Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, or Matthew Stafford.
Aaron Rodgers, 100%.
Yeah, that's my point.
Like, I know that people are really high on Tom Brady right now because of the talent that's around him, but
and just because the hype with him moving, he's in the news, people are talking about him, so that hype adds to his ADP, unfortunately.
If I had to put money down right now, like this is the bet that I always give people, or like kind of the question I always ask when they seem to be like on a high horse about somebody, is if I had to put down my next paycheck, my entire next paycheck on one of these guys, I'm putting it on Aaron Rodgers to have a better fantasy season.
Yeah, and like I was talking about, Aaron Rodgers had still a great year, but a slightly down year because like he was in a new offensive system. The reasons I talked about, Tom Brady's moving into a new offensive system, and his year last year was a lot worse than Aaron Rodgers was last year. So that's why, like, and obviously Tom Brady, it's a little bit different because he's getting a huge increase to the weapons that he's gaining. But it's Aaron Rodgers is obviously the safer pick.
Yes, yeah, Aaron Rodgers is definitely the safer pick. And he's going so late. Aaron Rodgers is an absolute steal right now. And he's going late enough to where if he does completely bust, that you can just go pick up somebody else and really not be upset about what you're losing. So, okay. We'll jump into the Lions now. We'll talk about Matthew Stafford for a moment. Matthew Stafford's moving up a lot of draft boards, Justin. I'm actually
I feel like I just stole some of your thunder by asking you who you would take, Aaron Rodgers or Matthew Stafford.
I would still take Aaron. I would take Aaron, but it's pretty surprising that he is 13th right now. And I guess when I look who's behind him, Daniel Jones, Ben Roethlisberger, Baker Mayfield, it kind of makes sense. And I think that Matthew Stafford represents a huge tier drop off at quarterback this season. But it's funny because he's the 13th quarterback, which means in a 12-team league, there's like a surplus of pretty good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
like it's so deep right now that Matthew Stafford is 13th and considered like, wow, he could finish in the top 5. Like he's done it before.
That's why you wait on quarterback people.
Yeah. And we talked about last episode with Lamar Jackson, if you want to go quarterback early, sure, but you could get Matthew Stafford, who, if I just look at a couple seasons ago, he's finished with like 4,446 yards and 29 touchdowns in 2017. Like That's really good. He was actually doing very well in 2019 until he got hurt. So Matthew Stafford, I think his place is going to be in two quarterback leagues. He's going to win a lot of two quarterback leagues for people, especially teams that like to go grab their two quarterbacks early. You know, if you were to grab, say, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, I think your team is going to be really solid. And in two quarterback leagues, the value of quarterback goes up so high. Uh, you could just win your league right there with a Matthew Stafford pick. In single quarterback leagues, sure. I think basically if you're taking him, that means you're passing up on Tom Brady or you're passing up on Carson Wentz or Aaron Rodgers, right? That's kind of that window that he falls in. And I've already said that I would take Aaron Rodgers over him, but I guess Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Justin. I mean, pick two.
One more time with names.
Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford.
That's super hard.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Aaron Rodgers, the first one. Second one is kind of a toss-up between Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford. I think I go Stafford, though.
Yeah, yeah. So that's pretty interesting. Stafford's 13, Tom Brady's 11. I mean, Kenny Golladay is
Marvin
probably
Jones.
only going to get better. Marvin Jones. Well, I mean, we'll talk about these guys in a moment, but
oh yeah, good point.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. The nice thing about Matthew Stafford is in those single quarterback leagues, he is the reason why you don't have to worry about picking a quarterback, because odds are one of those four guys I mentioned are just going to be sitting there when you're ready. So
yeah, somewhere around the 10th, 11th, 12th round.
Yeah, that's kind of all the analysis I have on Stafford. I mean, if we want to talk about his injury for a moment, I think that he'll be fine. I think he'll be ready to go. I think that he was almost ready to go to finish the season last season, and there was no reason to. They weren't competing for anything. I think he's totally fine. Re-injury is always a risk, but it's a risk with any player that's been hurt. So I'm not going to let that slow me down too much, but I guess it's something to consider.
Yeah. Next, we got the Vikings quarterback, the Dragon, Kirk Cousins.
Oof, sends chills down my spine.
Right? So does his contract, which he got extended.
Oh, my gosh.
He's so good at negotiating contracts. But playing football, on the other hand, Kirk Cousins goes on these hot streaks and then these very, very cold streaks that make you absolutely hate him as a person.
But he doesn't lose games.
Yeah.
So that's why he keeps getting paid.
But he loses fantasy games.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and it's horrible. But if you're in a one quarterback league and you're thinking about drafting him, don't. Just don't. For all the reasons Perry just explained about those other players that'll be left at the end of your draft. Mm-hmm. But I will still talk about him a little bit, just in case you are in a two quarterback league. He's probably a mid to late quarterback 2, somewhere probably around the 16 to 18 range for the quarterbacks is where I see him finishing. So in a two quarterback league, definitely startable as your second quarterback, or if your quarterback's on a bye week and you have 3 quarterbacks rostered, somewhere in there. But the Vikings have become more of a run-first team as of last year, and then I expect that to continue this year because they were incredible at it. So that's going to limit his production output. And I think this is obviously going to hurt Kirk Cousins. And fortunately for them, which I'll get more into, they only have 2 real viable wide receivers, so they could still be productive with the limited offensive output.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Kirk Cousins is maybe kind of a little bit of a sleeper, but I mean, I think that we're going to reiterate this 1,000 times this offseason. there's no reason to take a risk at quarterback this season.
Yeah,
So
your sleeper quarterback is irrelevant at this point.
it really is.
Unless it's a quarterback that is like if you think Aaron Rodgers is going to finish as the number 4 quarterback, sure, yeah, draft him later in the draft still. But that's your sleeper.
Yeah. I do like Kirk Cousins in 2 quarterback leagues just because I think his ceiling is pretty high and his floor is actually pretty high as well. I think he has a very safe floor, Kirk Cousins does. And like Justin said, he can explode. He's done it multiple times in his career, enough to make him extremely wealthy. So, 2 quarterback leagues. Sure, I'd be happy with Kirk Cousins as my second quarterback. I think that's somebody you're not going to have to worry about most of the season, and you'll be starting him. So, okay, running backs for Chicago, David Montgomery. When I was researching for this episode, I was actually very surprised to find David Montgomery in consensus rankings all the way down at 23. Justin and I own him in a Dynasty Twitter league that we co-manage, and we had a lot of trade requests for David Montgomery.
Yeah.
A lot, like more than one a week. And I look at who's around him, Mark Ingram, Le'Veon Bell. He's sandwiched between those two. And I think that I'd rather have Le'Veon Bell than David Montgomery because as weird as it is to say, I think the situation in New York is better than the situation in Chicago. But
my gut instantly told me no on that. And then as my brain thought about it, I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like Sam Darnold is probably better than Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
Right?
And I have more hope for him to get better.
Right. So the talk in Chicago right now is that David Montgomery is going to be a workhorse back. Tariq Cohen is still there. Tariq Cohen is a big play threat, but I don't think that he's going to be a guaranteed third down guy. Every third down he's going to be out there, right? Every long yardage situation he's going to be out there. I think that David Montgomery has proven that he can catch the ball well enough to be in on third downs. And I'm thinking that he's like a guaranteed lock for 240, 250 carries this season. And interesting, as I was researching this, here's a quote from Mike Tagliere. There have been 125 running backs who have had over 240 carries in the last 10 years. 0 of them have finished below RB25. So assuming that David Montgomery stays healthy, he's like a lock for low-end RB2. And I think that he might creep into that like mid-end to mid-high-end RB2. So right now you get him as like the 23rd running back. He could finish as like the 19th, 18th, 17th running back, and that would be right where I would expect him to fall. And then it's a steal value-wise. My one issue with him is who's around him. Like I said, Le'Veon Bell. I think I would definitely rather have Le'Veon Bell than David Montgomery. So I don't know if I'm going to be grabbing him if I can just grab Le'Veon Bell instead. But if Le'Veon Bell ends up, somebody reaches down to grab him and I end up with David Montgomery as like my third running back, that's cool. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I don't think he's under or overvalued. I kind of like where he's at. I think both of them probably should be a tad bit higher. But like you said, whichever one of them goes, I'm okay with the other one.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Justin, David Montgomery or Devin Singletary?
Montgomery.
David Montgomery or James Conner?
Montgomery. Oh, but don't get me started on James Conner. We could go back an episode and I'll go over that again.
All right, last one. David Montgomery or David Johnson?
Oh, Montgomery.
Interesting. David Johnson's going 20th right now. He's a 20th running back. So
I just think it's safer with Montgomery. And
probably is.
And because of that, with my first 2 picks, I'm not going to take a big risk like that. Well, do you have more on that?
No. The only other thing that I was going to say is like if you decide to go running back heavy at the start and you go running back in your draft and David Montgomery is the third running back you get, you're very happy. And I honestly believe that is probably the strat this season. due to how deep wide receiver
I
is.
would say depending on where you're drafting, though, too.
Sure. But man, I would be pretty happy if David Montgomery is my third running back.
Absolutely. But the reason why I asked if you're done is I was going to say, about avoiding that risk unless your name is Dalvin Cook, who is the running back for the Minnesota Vikings. And that's because Dalvin Cook is a beast. We finally got to see what a healthy Dalvin Cook looked like last year, and it was amazing. He's 24 years old, finished the year with 1,135 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns, 4.5 yards per attempt, 81 yards per game, 53 receptions, and 519 receiving yards. And this is my favorite stat, which you don't see on most stat lines when you look them up. He had 62 10 zone carries, meaning inside the 10. There's only one other player who equaled that number this year or this past year, and that's CMC, who obviously everybody loves. So they had the same amount of, they're the only two. The next player had 52, which was 10 less, quite a big drop off. That just tells you how much they like running the ball inside the red zone. And in case you're like, well, maybe they just really love giving it to Dalvin Cook. No, they just love running the ball, period. Because also, when you look up players who have the most carries inside the 10 zone, inside the top 15 is also a guy named Alexander Madison, which is why I love Dalvin Cook so much. Because, yeah, he is a injury risk, as he's had multiple severe injuries that have held him out for basically a full year multiple times. But with a guy like Alexander Madison, who you could take in the 8th round currently, it kind of secures that value, because if Dalvin Cook goes down, Alexander Madison will likely be a top 10 running back. From there for that point forward. So that's why I like him so much. I have him super high ranked compared to most people in the industry. I have him as my RB2, which I know is crazy, but I have faith in this. Because I think the reason why I think this is I think his touchdowns actually increased this year with the amount of carries he had inside the red zone or 10 zone. So I think he could see more touchdowns because the yards per carry in combination with that 10 zone, those 10 zone carries, tells me that his touchdowns should be higher than what they were. So I think that will secure it. And then also the solid handcuff makes me like, because I have him in Saquon very similarly ranked and projected. I know. I could go on all day on this, Ferry. But because of the handcuff, that's what secures it for me. Because if Saquon goes down with an injury, which he also did last year, who are you picking up?
No. I mean, that's true, but that doesn't really affect my rankings for the lead back.
It does for me.
I don't think it makes the lead back better because there's somebody good behind him.
No, but it makes it a safer pick.
I guess so. I do think that Dalvin Cook ranked at 6 right now is not doing him enough justice. I think Dalvin Cook is probably 4th for me.
I will say that's because of the holdout, though. He dropped down since he started holding out, and you have seen a increase in.
You gonna let me talk about your boy?
Yeah, go for it. Sorry, I get excited.
I think Dalvin Cook is very good. I think there is the injury risk, sure. The reason that I have him below Zeke is just because I think Zeke is just guaranteed the work, and Zeke, the injury history isn't there. He's constantly in contention for leading the league in rushing yards. I'm going to keep Zeke at 3. I'm going to have Dalvin Cook at 4, but it's higher than where he currently is. I do have him ahead of Alvin Kamara. I have him ahead of Derrick Henry. I'm not going to put him ahead of Saquon or Christian McCaffrey.
I'm not putting him above Christian McCaffrey. That's crazy. I'm not the fantasy counselor over here.
Dalvin Cook is very good. He also is currently being drafted in a really unique position because it's right where people start thinking about wide receivers like Michael Thomas. And you're able to get him a little bit later. He drops to like the 7th, 8th, 9th pick sometimes, which is pretty insane. And you're able to snag him there. And I think if you're getting him at like the 7th pick, you're winning the first round. So
yeah, and so I have him ranked super high, but just because I have him ranked super high, I'm not telling you to draft him there. Like, for example, I'm in a dynasty league where I had the 2nd overall pick. So I drafted Saquon Barkley, and then about 5 minutes after the draft ended, I traded Saquon Barkley for Dalvin Cook and Odell Beckham Jr.
Okay. Are you done?
I mean, no, but we're going to have to move on at some
done.
point. So
You're done. You're done.
I can't believe you let me talk about him, Perry.
I let you as a gift. All right.
And I made you
I gave you an inch. You took a mile.
You should have known that. You should have known that was happening.
All right. We're going to talk about the Lions running back situation. This is this backfield, I'm really excited to see how it plays out here. Justin and I are both big fans of Kerryon Johnson as a player. We think that he's a wonderful player. He's a very good talent. We were both very excited about him last season. Injuries really screwed that up. So his inability to stay on the field has led the Lions to go out and draft DeAndre Swift in the beginning of the 2nd round. And I mean, as good as Kerryon Johnson has been at times, a team does not spend an early 2nd round pick on a running back and not use that running back immediately. So right there, no matter what you have to say about Kerryon Johnson, you already have to assume that he's probably losing a significant amount of time to DeAndre Swift. I don't even think this is going to be a 50-50 split here. I think that DeAndre Swift is probably going to get about 65 to 70% of the workload, maybe even right away, depending on how training camp goes. If his pass protection is as good as it was in college, and it was good, man, Kerryon Johnson's in trouble, big trouble. I think that the ceiling right now for me on Kerryon Johnson is about 12 touches a game. There might be games where he only gets like 6 touches. DeAndre Swift, on the other hand, I'm very excited for. I think that his play style fits in very well with a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. There's going to be a lot of dump off passes to the running back. That's always been the case. And I think DeAndre Swift is going to feast on those. DeAndre Swift is one of my favorite rookie running backs this season. I think it's a great rookie running back class in general, but I think DeAndre Swift fell into one of the best situations. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire probably just a little bit better, but
yeah, I have him as my 2nd highest ranked in redraft.
Yep. I do as well. And I unfortunately, Kerryon is probably going to have to be owned, but there's just no situation except for DeAndre Swift getting hurt where Kerryon has the ceiling or the potential that he had last year, which is unfortunate. And I think that we've really seen the peak of Kerryon come and go. So
yeah, I will. If I am the Swift owner, I'm probably snagging Kerryon later in that draft.
Well, the problem is that DeAndre Swift is going at 27. Kerryon's going at 38. So it's not like
you have to get him almost immediately, which kind of sucks.
Right. And let me ask you, would you rather have Kerryon Johnson or Phillip Lindsay?
Phillip Lindsay for sure.
Right, and Phillip Lindsay's 39, Matt Breida 40, Tevin Coleman 41, Latavius Murray, who I would argue is an even better handcuff, even if you don't own Alvin Kamara. So it's I just don't think it's going to happen.
He's right in that handcuff range. Right. Like those guys are almost all handcuffs for like better situations.
I mean, Alexander Madison falls at 44. And I would
he's
rather
steadily rising too, though. So
right,
he'll probably be in that same range.
And then you look at somebody, and I'm sorry, I'll end right here, but you look at somebody like Zach Moss going at 47, and it's almost like, well, I'd rather try maybe holding on to Zach Moss instead of Kerryon Johnson. I know what I'm getting out of Kerryon Johnson. So I won't be drafting him, but I will definitely be trying to grab DeAndre Swift as much as possible.
Yeah. Next, we got Aaron Jones, the running back for the Packers. So he finished in PPR last year as the running back 2. He had 20 total touchdowns, 19 rushing, 1 receiving last year. Showed that he can catch the ball as well as he can run it, like just as well as he could. He's a solid all around back. He's not top tier like guy. He's not in the talk of like Zeke, CMC, like those guys, but he's right behind that for skill level. Those things are all positive things, but I want to cover the negative things on this team as well. So the negatives for this team is he's likely to see some touchdown regression because 20 touchdowns is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So you're likely to see regression there. He has a second good running back, not as good as him, but good running back behind him in Jamal Williams. And then they drafted with, as Perry was just talking about, their second round draft capital, AJ Dillon, which they're not planning to have him sit on the bench with second round draft capital at the running back position. They don't do that.
Second worst draft pick. The first worst was the quarterback pick.
Yeah, their first round pick.
Yeah. But go on.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to start to see this workload split a little bit more, especially because their head coach, Matt LaFleur, has shown that he likes to run multiple back sets in the past. And now that he's had a year under here and he got to draft the guy that he wants in AJ Dillon, I expect to see him take a few of those carries, which is further going to cut into those touchdowns. I have him, like, in my projections going from 20 touchdowns to 11. That's a huge decrease. And with that kind of decrease, I think he's being overdrafted as the RB11 and his ADP of 15 currently. Like, that's just too high for me, and I'm probably not drafting this dude who doesn't have a guaranteed workload at this point.
Yeah, I like Aaron Jones a lot.
I hate that they drafted AJ Dillon because he can do it.
I was going to say that.
I'm sorry, you're tired, Perry. I told you I was going to pick up the energy for you.
Put it back down. Put it back down. Put it back where you found it. Yeah, Aaron Jones. It was just such a bonehead draft pick for me. I kind of would think that they would consider doing it maybe this coming season, picking up another running back. But Aaron Jones is literally in his prime. He has shown no reason why he would slow down, and then they go pick up another running back. It's a mind-blowing pick, but unfortunately, it really does affect my ability to be confident in drafting Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the Chicago wide receivers. Actually, probably
multiple?
They do. They actually do. And I think this is probably the brightest spot on the team. David Montgomery, I guess you could hear an argument that he might be the brightest spot on the team, but Allen Robinson really has found a pretty comfortable home here in Chicago. Finished the season in 2019 with 1,147 yards and 7 touchdowns. With, let me remind you, quite possibly the worst quarterback in the league last season with Mitch Trubisky. And if we had a repeat performance with Trubisky and somehow he keeps his job all 16 games, and we got this again out of Allen Robinson, we'd be very, very pleased. So I'm excited about Allen Robinson this season. I feel like people maybe might be sleeping on him just a little bit because the offense was so anemic last season. So Allen Robinson is kind of a really good steal at the moment. Just looking at the wide receiver rankings, Allen Robinson is currently ranked 14th. There's people like Adam Thielen, Juju Smith-Schuster, A.J. Brown going ahead of him. I would probably take Allen Robinson over Juju and over Adam Thielen for sure. And they're both going before him. So Allen Robinson is kind of a no-brainer. And I think that if Nick Foles gets in there, the potential that Nick Foles has to put up huge numbers, that could be really fun to watch, especially like touchdown numbers. We could see Allen Robinson break that double-digit touchdown mark again. Anthony Miller is the second wide receiver on this team. Taylor Gabriel is now gone. I think that just looking at the stats for last season for Anthony Miller, finishing with 656 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did have 7 touchdowns in 2018. he clearly can play. He can clearly play. He's good. I just don't think he's gotten the opportunity. I really don't. I think that right now he's being drafted as like a wide receiver 4 or 5, and he has wide receiver 3 potential. I think that we need to probably expect some positive regression out of the quarterback play in Chicago. I think that it's going to be better than it was last year. I don't think that Mitchell Trubisky is going to be good. I don't think that Nick Foles is going to be really good, but I think they're going to be better than what was happening last year. So if Anthony Miller were to finish around 800 yards and like 5 to 6 touchdowns, that's a pretty good wide receiver that you're taking as like your 5th wide receiver in the draft. So there's people going around him are, oh man, I just had him pulled up. Here we go. Jamison Crowder, Sterling Shepard, Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, these are all guys with huge question marks that we can't expect anything big from. I would be fine with taking Anthony Miller over any of those 3 guys that I just mentioned. The one caveat to that is there are 2 rookie wide receivers going just after CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. I would probably take Jerry Jeudy over Anthony Miller. Yeah. I think the situation's better. He's poised to have a much better season. But, if somebody reaches down and grabs Jerry Jeudy and you're like, well, I need a 5th wide receiver. Okay. Or even a 4th wide receiver. Anthony Miller could finish as a high-end wide receiver 3. So there are 2 wide receivers in Chicago.
I might take CeeDee Lamb over him just if that's my 5th wide receiver.
Just because the potential.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's I don't know where he's going to end up in the pecking order there in Dallas, but like maybe he ends up at the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree with your take on it, which I don't like. I don't want to agree with it. I'm sorry, Perry, but I do.
But you do.
Yeah.
So
eat it. So I'm going to talk about a guy you mentioned here, which he felt a little disrespected by your take, though, Perry.
Okay.
So I'm starting with the Vikings wide receivers. So with former Vikings wideout Stephon Diggs now on the Bills, Adam Thielen is now the clear-cut wide receiver 1 for the Vikings, 29 years old. He is hurt by a hamstring injury most of last year's, which really hurt fantasy owners. I think that's kind of hurt his value as well. Mm-hmm. Plus, just having an injury always hurts your fantasy value. In Cousins' first year with the team, though, in 2018, Thielen played all 16 games, so it's a little bit easier to like kind of see what they did then, even though it was a different offensive mentality at the time. He finished with 113 receptions there, which tied him for 4th most in the NFL. 153 targets, 7th most. 1,373 receiving yards, which is the 9th most in the NFL. And he tied for the 10th most touchdowns. Those, obviously all very good numbers for him. I do agree with you on Robinson being ahead of him, but I think both these guys might be slightly overlooked. And I think that both of them could probably do quite a bit better than what they did last year.
I think the big question with Adam Thielen is actually Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, which I'm about to talk about, but
I just did it to you.
But before I do, I also do think there will be slightly more passing with a new offensive coordinator here than there was last year.
I agree.
Yeah, so
especially early in the season it was like historic low numbers.
Yeah.
So it's got to get higher than that.
And last year, the rookie wide receiver Justin Jefferson, last year is in Minnesota State. He finished with where did this go? 30 receptions, 48 for out of 466 targets. He had 418 yards and 6 touchdowns in 10 games played. So Or no, sorry, I'm sorry. I'm still talking about Thielen here. So he still did great last year in the games that he played. If you extrapolate it out to the full season, which if you do, it puts him in a top 10 range. I'm not saying he's going to finish there, just that he's being undervalued currently. Now, the player they drafted to replace Diggs is Justin Jefferson. With Diggs out, they brought in Justin Jefferson from LSU in round 1 of the draft. Now, round 1 means that this player they expect to have an immediate impact. He's the new wide receiver 2 there. He's got great hands. He's a huge bodied receiver that's a great red zone target. And he has amazing speed. He ran a 4.43 40, and I think that there's a strong possibility that he could be the number 1 rookie wide receiver this year. He has the opportunity to with the position he's been thrust into. So I love to see what he can do, and I think both of these guys are. I'm not drafting both of them because I'm not taking 2 wide receivers on the same team, but I would love to have either one of these wide receivers on my fantasy team.
I would much. This is going to sound weird. I would much rather have Justin Jefferson just because how much cheaper he is than Adam Thielen.
Yeah, because as you're alluding to, I would love to have an Allen Robinson followed by a Justin Jefferson, like later in the draft.
Well, I mean, and you could do Allen Robinson, go pick up somebody else, and then Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But Allen Robinson instead of Thielen.
Yeah, I would as well. Okay, so moving on to Detroit wide receivers. There are 3 wide receivers I need to talk about on this team. Kenny Golladay, who is skyrocketing up a lot of people's draft boards, probably for good reason, right? I think Kenny Golladay has proven that he is a very competent wide receiver. He had that big 11 touchdown season in 2019, which I think has really helped propel his numbers up. But he also had the most targets on the team at 116 targets. He only hauled in 65 of them. I think that I would like to see that percentage go up a little bit, but the more targets you get, the more targets you'll miss, I guess, essentially, right? So if we look at his counterpart on the same team, Marvin Jones only had 91 targets, but hauled in 62 of them. It's a way more efficient amount. I think that Marvin Jones is a journeyman wide receiver. I think he's super good hands, and that's probably why. But and Marvin Jones also finished with 9 touchdowns last season. So both these guys are super fantasy relevant in my eyes. Kenny Golladay is extremely expensive, whereas Marvin Jones is going much, much later in the draft and probably the better value, in my opinion. I think the yardage number is going to go up. He finished with 779 yards last season. Remember, Matthew Stafford missed a ton of games, and the replacements that stepped in there were just atrocious. And the fact that he still finished with 9 touchdowns, I mean, he's probably going to creep in at 1,000 yard receiving again, and could easily finish with 7 to 9 touchdowns again. And where he's being drafted, that's an instant steal. That could be a league winner, to be completely honest with you. The third wide receiver on the team is Danny Amendola. Justin, what if I told you that Danny Amendola set a career high in yardage last season? With 678 yards.
I don't even know if I could believe you.
That's true. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think of Danny Amendola as this really good wide receiver that's just kind of out of his prime. And it's like, dude had his most yards of his career, most targets of his career, and second most receptions of his career last season. It's pretty weird. I don't really know what to do with Danny Amendola. I don't think I want him on a team.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
Even in like super deep leagues, if literally the peak of his yardage career is 678 yards, with the most targets he's ever gotten in a season, I just don't think that that's worth it in any way. I just think that there's way, like Andy Isabella going around the same time, I would much rather have Andy Isabella.
Yeah, I think
So,
there's more upside. Like I'm going at that late in a draft, I'm looking for
right,
upside. And I feel like with Danny Amendola, it's just downhill from here.
right, exactly. And that's the point that I was trying to like get to when I was talking about Danny Amendola is a lot of people, especially people that don't put in as much research and work as we do, will see the name Danny Amendola. Oh God, he's won Super Bowls, and it's like, don't draft the name, especially in this situation. You're not getting what you think you're getting out of him. Um, Go draft Andy Isabella instead, and the potential, the ceiling, the what could happen there is much much higher than with Danny Amendola. Um, Kenny Golladay, he just kind of has to fall in the right spot to you, right? You're going to have to put up a lot of draft capital for him, probably a second round pick. Marvin Jones, I think, was the best value on the team, hands down.
Yeah, I was just looking up Marvin Jones,
Yeah.
and I mean, last year he only played 9 games and he
Uh,
had
he
500 yards. Or
he played 13.
no,
13
year
last
year
year.
prior, sorry,
Right.
in
Right.
2018. And before that, though, when he played a full season, he had 1,000 yards or
Nine
over a
nine
thousand yards.
touchdowns.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. He's definitely being undervalued.
And the great thing is if we look at that 2017 stat line where he had over 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns, he
Yeah.
only had 107 targets, which I
Yeah,
mean,
his whole career he's done it without a ton of targets.
right. And that's exciting to see. It means I don't need him to be the number one guy on a team for him to be super productive.
Yeah. But something to expect from him is there are games like he does tend to have games where he scores a lot of points and
Hmm.
then games where he doesn't do so hot. But he doesn't completely disappear either. It's just there's games where it's a big variance in his score.
Sure, definitely. But I mean, the what you're paying for him, he's
Yeah,
probably your third wide receiver.
yeah, maybe lower, yeah.
Yeah. So
Um yeah, so I'm getting into the Green Bay wide receivers.
yes, you are.
So
Can confirm.
Devonte Adams is obviously the wide receiver one there. He's most likely being drafted in either the first round or the very beginning of the second round. I have him ranked currently as my wide receiver 2. He missed 4 games last year and did not reach double digit touchdowns, with Aaron Jones taking almost every touchdown to be had on the team. So I think he's going to have a much better 2020, as he will see, as I expect Aaron Jones to see some negative regression in touchdowns. I expect Devonte Adams to see some positive regression in touchdowns as they throw the ball a little bit more inside the red zone and 10 zone. But I don't quite expect him to make it back to the 2019 numbers. I expect him to break double-digit touchdowns and surpass 1,000 yards, which is great. That should put him up there in those wide receiver 2, in that wide receiver 2 area. He's not Michael Thomas. I think there's a big gap between those two, but I think he's the closest one to reaching that. After him, you have, I mean, they got a couple wide receivers there, but there's one I want to talk about that I believe is fantasy relevant, and that's Alan Lazard. I believe he's the only other wide receiver there that's going to have consistent fantasy, that will be consistently fantasy relevant. Got it out. Got it out there. Uh, he stood out last year, especially in contested catches and his run blocking ability, which with this team moving more towards a running team, they're going to value. MVS and St. Brown have both faded back, who we were all talking about last year, which one of them would be the number 2 wide receiver there in Green Bay. And we were all wrong. It was Alan Lazard. He's surpassed all of them and taken his seat as the wide receiver 2. They're all going to be fighting him to try and get that seat at the table. Now, with Green Bay talking about another team that's trying to run a double tight end set. So that means you'll have 2 wide receivers out there, being Alan Lazard and Devonte Adams. They also brought in Devin Funches. So I'm not super scared about Devin Funches taking that seat from him, but I just want to make it clear that Lazard is by no means a sure thing. But from what I've seen from him, he's at least worth a late shot, especially with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time throwing him the ball. I think that he could definitely finish a lot higher than where he's currently being drafted.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was high on Allen Lazard even last season, so I think I'm still on board for that. I think that
And he did a sweet video for us.
yes,
So, I
he
mean,
did
there's
do a
always
sweet
that.
video. Yeah, there's always brownie points in doing a sweet video for clock management.
He buttered me up.
I'm trying to make a meat and butter joke. No, not happening. All right, we're going to talk about tight ends now. I know it's not the most glamorous position that we've talked about so far, but I do want to address the Jimmy Graham situation in Chicago. Did you know that Jimmy Graham was the highest paid tight end last season?
Yes, I read that.
Isn't that disappointing?
It's hilarious. I just feel bad for the tight end position. And it makes me kind of laugh when I hear about people talking about, oh, George Kittle wants to be the highest paid tight end. I'm like, well, it's not saying much if Jimmy Graham is currently the highest paid tight end.
Right. So it's really hard for me to figure out where Jimmy Graham fits in. Like why he isn't good, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out, right? Because I don't think he's bad, but like his fantasy production is just so low, so consistently. He had his first season ever, which he was my sleeper pick that season, 2013. He had 16 touchdowns. And I think a big part of the reason that Jimmy Graham has remained so relevant is because of that season in particular, where he had 16 touchdowns in 2013. He had 10 touchdowns the following season. He had 10 touchdowns in 2017 with Seattle, but otherwise it's 2, 6, 2, and 3. And I see no reason why his numbers will improve beyond what he did last season with 447 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I honestly think 3 touchdowns is like the ceiling for Jimmy Graham. So while a lot of people might think, oh, I'm getting such a steal sleeper out of Jimmy Graham, I do not think you are. I do not think it's worth it. The guy I'll talk about for Detroit is a much better choice if you're trying to be trying to play 5D chess and beat everybody with some weird sleeper. When TJ Hawkinson, I do not think it's Jimmy Graham. I don't think you're tricking anybody. You're just going to look like an idiot if you draft Jimmy Graham and expect him to be good. There we go.
Yeah, and like you look at the quarterbacks that Jimmy Graham has had throw him the ball, like previous to this year, right? Like,
yeah,
you got Russell Wilson, you got Drew Brees, you have Aaron Rodgers. Like...
and now you got Mitch Trubisky. Somebody else I want to talk about on this team though is Cole Kmet. Actually, I'm kind of excited. I am, well, not on the depth chart currently, but I think he'll finish as the tight end 1 on this team. I'm actually really excited about Cole Kmet, especially in Dynasty. Especially in Dynasty. The tight end is a very important position within this offense. He's a young kid, right? So he's got some work to do, no doubt. It'll take some time for him to catch up. Like most tight ends need a couple of years, to be completely honest with you. But if you were to pick him up in Dynasty, and let's say Jimmy Graham gets hurt this season or is completely irrelevant.
Useless.
Yeah, Cole Kmet could end up seeing some really nice games. I don't think he'll finish in the top 10. I don't even think he'll finish in the top 15 for tight ends. But I do think that he'll far outperform his draft capital right now. He's the 24th ranked tight end right now, and I think he'll easily be in the top 20. And next season, 2021, he could start making a conversation for being a top 10 tight end. I see that happening, and you literally have to invest nothing in him. You don't even have to draft him. But as soon as you see Dynasty, definitely draft him. But redraft, you don't even have to draft him. He might end up blowing up here or there, and you can just pay attention to it. You might have to grab him on waivers. But Dynasty, man, he's pretty high up on my list, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually grabbed him in a Dynasty league I drafted in like last month.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Cole Kemet Dynasty. Oh man, that's a great pick.
All right. So I'm going to talk about the Vikings tight end here. It's a
Talk
little
about
bit
it.
it's a little bit tricky because similar to the Chicago tight ends you were just talking about, they have an old veteran tight end and not quite a rookie, but a second year tight end, so a young guy coming in. They have the 30-year-old veteran, Kyle Rudolph, there, that I'm sure most people know off name value. And then they have the second year player, Irv Smith Jr., out of Alabama. Both had almost the exact same season last year, which is crazy. Rudolph took 39 receptions, 367 yards, 9.4 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns, and 48 out of 466 targets, which is 10.3% of the target share. Meanwhile, Smith had 36 receptions, 311 yards, 8.6 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns, and 47 out of 466 targets, which is 10.1%. So a 0.2% difference in their target share, which is insanely close. The only difference between the two players was the touchdowns. Rudolph, with a huge, or was the huge benefactor there in the red zone, got most of those targets, and with his chemistry with that he's built with Kirk Cousins, was able to secure most of the touchdowns there. But they're talking like they're going to be running 2 tight end sets there, which kind of lowers both of their value. But I would rather take a shot on Irv Smith Jr. than I would on Rudolph. I have both of them ranked outside my top 12, so I'm probably not taking either one of them. But if I'm taking a shot on one of them, it's Irv Smith Jr., especially in any sort of dynasty with Rudolph being 30 years old. Irv Smith Jr. is going to be in his 3rd year, which is when tight ends most likely break out. And he showed progression, so I believe in that. And I think he's going to do just fine. And if Rudolph ever leaves that team, then he could be up there in the top 10, top 5 talk for tight ends.
With some big talk.
Yeah, I mean, down the road here, as
Okay.
because Rudolph's still on the team, and tight ends seem to play for like 35 years.
Every time you said Rudolph, I really wanted to say "with your nose so bright."
But he's not leading them anywhere.
No, he's not. He's truly not. Really good run blocker.
Yeah.
Really good run blocker, which is why he's not going anywhere.
But so is Irv Smith Jr. That's why, like, these, I swear, he's like he's a clone of Rudolph.
Clone. Okay. Last tight end I'm going to talk about, last player I'm going to talk about today is TJ Hawkinson. And this was a guy that I was alluding to. If you really want to try and play 5D chess and outsmart your entire league, you could maybe take a shot on this guy. I do think that he has potential. I do think with Matthew Stafford being there, he will have a much better season than he did in 2019. But I do not think that the first game of 2019 is any indication as to what we're going to get from him on a daily or weekly basis. The 131 yards and a touchdown is not going to happen very often for TJ Hawkinson. It's not going to happen very often for any tight end. And I think a lot of why he is still talked about is specifically from that week where he played the worst tight end defense in the league in Arizona, and he put up an insane stat line. I do think some of the stat lines, like 1 reception on 4 targets for 1 yard, probably won't happen very often either. I think he'll be better than that. But I think that TJ Hawkinson has a chance to creep into the top 10 tight ends this season. He might have a chance to creep a little higher than top 10, like maybe top 7, but he's just going so late that it's like an unnecessary risk that you just don't need to take, in my opinion. I think he's somebody that if I see that he starts getting a ton of targets week 1, he might be my top waiver priority, assuming who I picked up for tight end. But please don't, if you just eliminate week 1 of 2019, TJ Hawkinson would not even be on your radar. And just remember that idea when you're drafting. That's all I'm asking.
No, like I like Hawkinson too, especially now that I have to talk about Green Bay's tight ends.
Who?
Green Green Bay's 4 tight ends that they're going to be rostering. It's horrible. I mean,
Should we just cut it here?
I mean, I'm gonna bring them up because 2 of them do have some fantasy or some dynasty relevance.
Okay.
It's literally the only reason, because
Okay.
they're 4 tight ends that they're keeping. I'm gonna do my best not to slaughter these names. Jace Sternberger. That was one of the easier ones. Mercedes Lewis. I know that one. Robert Tonyan and Josiah De Guerra. That's a question mark at the end in case you weren't sure. Uh,
I'm gonna give you a 7.
right, not bad. I expected worse.
I think he stuck the landing. Go on.
So Sternberger was their 3rd-round pick last year. And he was inactive for basically the whole regular season. But he did come back for the postseason, and he showed some flashes, looked good in his rookie year. This year, they drafted De Guerra as a 3rd-round pick. And he seems to have been handpicked, like they went and out to seek this guy for the new offense they're trying to form there, because they think that he'll be great for it. But also he's a rookie tight end, as we talked about. It takes rookie tight ends a little bit to get in the swing of things in the NFL. So I'm not sure which one of these 2 is the better pick in Dynasty, as they're both still fighting for this position. But I'm okay with taking a swing on either one of these guys late, very late in a Dynasty draft, or if they're out there on a waiver wire, picking one of them up, because they're going to see some opportunities, and one of them is going to establish a role in this offense at some point. So you can bench them and just kind of hold on to them and hope it turns into something. But for a redraft league, if you are not in a Dynasty league, do not target a tight end from Green Bay. Please don't.
Has Aaron Rodgers ever really had a relevant tight end?
Yeah, Jimmy Graham got paid a lot of money.
No, okay. You know what I mean. Richard Rodgers?
Yeah, I was trying to think back.
Maybe. I'm just looking back here.
2016, I want to say 2015 maybe.
Jermichael Finley?
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of.
I guess the point I'm trying to get at is, like, Aaron Rodgers has never really had a fantasy relevant tight end.
Yeah,
not really.
Yeah, he's never been one of those guys who hyper targets the tight end.
Yeah, and maybe as he gets older and his game changes a little bit, that may change. But
yeah, I'm not banking on it.
Yeah, I'm not willing to count on that one that much.
And that's why I like Alan Lazard.
Yeah,
and
right on,
Adam.
Right on.
Devontae Adams so much.
Well, we'll have another episode coming out midweek.
You want to do the AFC South?
Yes, I do.
Fantastic.
AFC South. So we'll do another episode on the AFC South midweek. Thank you very much for listening. Please comment. Please subscribe. Those are 2 free, easy things you can do that really help us out a lot. And it gives you a chance to win a signed jersey.
And we just hit 800 subscribers on YouTube.
Amazing. Let's try and hit 1,000 before the season starts. It's a huge ask. I know that. That's a big gain for us, but tell your friends to just check us out. I really think that we have a great product. We want to make it better. We want support. We want feedback. And we need your guys' help with all of that. So thank you again. Talk to you guys in a few days.